Hey, what's up, guys? It's Morgan with My Spiritual Life, and I'm so excited today because I'm going to be talking about the topic finding happiness from within with a very good friend, colleague, coach of mine, Karen Lewis. Oh, that way, that way. Karen, thank you so much for being here. If you would start with just a brief introduction of who you are and what you do, I would love people to get to know you a little bit.
Okay. All right. And thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this. This is really, I feel like it's a fun topic of loving yourself. It doesn't have to be heavy, because love feels good. Love is fun. And so it's a fun topic. Um, I
And
am,
yet it really is heavy though.
right? Yes. But, love
Just
is heavy,
it
but it's
depends. It depends. Okay, sorry. Go
true.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Um, but the more fun you make it, the easier it is, right? But yeah,
No,
there's
there
stuff,
you go.
right? Yeah. So I'm a foot zoner and I'm an emotion transformation coach. I've been doing this since 2011 and I love it. The first time I opened up an energy work book, it was like remembering something I already knew. And I really needed it in my life. And it has transformed my life. And I love being able to help other people feel better about themselves and better about their life. So when people are feeling overwhelmed and anxious and frustrated, I can come in and help you feel more balanced and confident and enthusiastic about yourself and about your life and help you transform the way you see yourself and the way you see your life. I work in a couple of different, well, foot zoning, and that's on the foot in my office at my home, and then I also work distance work on Zoom with doing energy sessions. I have a program called Rise, 7 Steps to a Happy, More Powerful Me. And that walks you through the chakras, the beliefs that are held in each of the 7 main chakras. And so it's a really great program. I love the way it brings to your attention things that you didn't think about before. Cause like it's really great to have the sessions where, Karen, this is what's going on with me. Yes, let's do that. And but then also the sessions of, hey, have you thought about how this is affecting you? So I do both kind of sessions, one at the program and also bring me what's on your mind and let's chat about it. And I'm going to offer some discounts and we'll talk about more about that at the end. Um, let's see about me. I mean, that's pretty much what I do. My favorite thing to do is laugh. That's my personal.
Oh my gosh.
that's that's personally me. My husband and I like to go camping in our RV in the summertime. Um, and I have 4 fantastic children, 2 of which are married, which brought 2 more children into my life. And I feel like I'm winning in the in-law stage, in the in-law picks. And so that's fantastic. And a big thing about our family is I had Lyme, didn't know it. So, and being pregnant with my 4 kids, they all got Lyme. And so that's been a really big part of our journey as a family and individually of, how do I learn to love and accept myself when I can't do what I want to do and it goes on for years. So,
I love that introduction. And I just gotta say, uh, I met you a couple years ago, probably like 4 years ago now, maybe. I don't know. It's been a wild ride at a class we took together, and I remember that we were partnered up in that class, and it was like self improvement stuff, working through stuff, and you hit me with some like mom healing stuff that just like wrecked me, and I was like, I need to learn more from this woman. Like, and so I before you left, I like got your number, and then I was at your house the next week. And
yes.
so I couldn't think of someone better to work on this topic with me today than you, because from what I've
Thank you.
seen from you over the last couple years, as I've worked with you, as I've watched you work with clients, as I've sent you clients and seen the
Mm,
success they've had from you, is just your magical ability to teach people how to love themselves and learn to be more optimistic and to empower themselves to work through difficult situations. And I think that large reason why you're probably so good at that is at least in part because of your Lyme journey, and we'll get more into that in a little bit because I think it was
Mhm.
a difficult thing that you learned how to really love yourself through that, and I just think that's so amazing. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Morgan.
Okay, so the topic today, a little bit more about that. I found this quote in like a meditation book I was reading, and it says, "It's not easy to find happiness in ourselves, and it's not possible to find it elsewhere." And this is Agnes Repplier. I don't know how to say it. I'm going to read it one more time. "It's not easy to find happiness in ourselves, and it's not possible to find it elsewhere." This quote means so much to me. Before I get into that, shout out to Gail, who is a Patreon supporter. Thanks for being here. And also Mama Joe, freaking love you. All right. So this quote, I would love to hear just off the top of your head your thoughts about that quote, just to kind of skim the surface a little bit.
Okay, so when you told me the quote, my response was, yes.
Yeah,
That's what
I
I
knew you would.
that's what I have to say about that. It is impossible to find happiness outside yourself. You can find like moments of happiness, right? And then it passes. Like I can tell somebody till I'm blue in the face, I love you, you're awesome. And if they don't believe me, they hear it and they're like, oh, thank you. And then it's out the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if it doesn't come from with it, and that, that keeps you chasing things.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I was so when I read this quote, and I've had this on my list of, oh, go to daddy. My 5-year-old wanted to join the live stream.
He might have some good feedback for us.
He might have some good feedback for us. Okay. Um 1 second here. Just gotta make sure my 5-year-old's okay. And we're back. thanks for
Hey.
thanks for your patience, guys. I just he shat himself, and I didn't want him running around the house with that on his own. But he found dad, so we're good to go. Okay, so this quote, I was so excited about it when I found it. I was like, I need to do a whole video talking about this because this quote basically perfectly encapsulates my entire life. And it's the chasing that you mentioned. I spent so much time and energy just chasing things, chasing relationships, chasing hobbies, chasing experiences, chasing even success and fame. And it just never worked. It always never felt enough. It always burnt out eventually. It was always this point of like, oh, I get this dopamine hit of this new friendship or this new whatever, but eventually I burn back out into feeling empty, feeling alone, feeling unfulfilled, feeling worthless. So this quote just means so much to me because I feel like what really started to turn things around for me was when I actually started to try to understand myself and take good care of myself and try to actually like myself. Then it was like, oh, like this is sustainable. Like this is way better than chasing things that just don't last. A couple examples I want to give, well, and to get more specific too, is that I think the reason why we get into this situation where we're chasing things is usually because of childhood trauma, right? And it doesn't have to be like crazy trauma. It can just be that you weren't feeling seen and heard and you didn't know how to cope with your feelings. It could be that you had parents with mental illness or addiction problems, but it could be more subtle than that. And essentially, this can leave a void of self-worth that leaves you hungry for just more and more and more. But you can't fix an internal problem externally. So if you feel like that sounds like what you're dealing with, if you feel like you're chasing things and ultimately not feeling very fulfilled, you have to start from within. Um, you know, one of our biggest struggles in life are often not the external things, they're the internal things. And that's kind of what I've learned along the way. So one last thing I'll say about the quote, to break it down, this quote, I'm going to read it one more time. It's not easy to find happiness in ourselves, and it's not possible to find it elsewhere. We're talking about you got to understand yourself and you have to care about yourself to learn to take care of yourself, to actually go after what you want, to know what you want, and then be able to go after it. Okay, so Karen, I want to hear more about what got you on this path. What kind of got you on this path of like your big heart and compassion and love, and what makes you basically the rock star that you are? Tell me.
Oh, so many, so many. No, in college, I remember thinking, I don't feel good when I talk negatively about myself. And I've never been one to like talk negatively about other people. Like if I have my sessions where I'm downloading and like, but it's to solve the problem. But I've never been one to just bash on people. But then I was realizing that I was making negative jokes about myself and I wasn't feeling good. And that was a big deal to me. And so I made a goal to not talk negatively about myself. Um, and like even when I remember in middle school thinking, like I wonder why that person is doing that or acting that way. And so it's always been interesting to me. And like, I remember talking to friends in high school and they'd say, well, I don't even know how I feel. And I would say, like, well, are you feeling blah, 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 blah? And they'd be like, yeah, and so it just was something that came naturally to me. And um, then with the illness that I had and going to many doctors and nobody being able to help me. And one doctor saying, hey, well, you have good kids, so go home and enjoy them. And I was like, I enjoy my kids, but that's not going to help me get better. That's why I want
Oh
to get
my
better.
gosh, that's so dismissive. Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
get
was
it. I
so mad.
that's rough. Like I get they're trying to
Yeah.
be optimistic, but that is when you're dealing with serious chronic health issues, that is so frustrating to hear. Like,
Yeah.
why don't you just be happy? Like, okay, all
I
right,
know, right?
I forgot to try that.
Yeah, and then with the Lyme disease, it ended up in my nervous system. There's also DNA stuff that really caused, that just was like a perfect petri dish for depression. I was actually hospitalized 3 times for feeling suicidal. And, it's just like, I can't live this way. There has got to be another answer. And in just asking, okay, what else can I do? What else can I do? It was brought to me. The foot zoning was brought to me. My husband's grandma said, Karen, you got to try this. And she paid for my first few sessions. And then I was getting foot zoned one day and I was sitting there and I was thinking, my goodness, this could be so helpful to my family. And literally my head, it was like this. My head like literally flew back. I was like, I got to learn this. And I've been all in since then. So, and it's been a huge, like I said, it's just transformed my life. It's transformed the way I view the world around me, the way I view relationships, the different boundaries that I allow in my life, like how I allow people to treat me. And it wasn't just a 1 day journey. All the different aspects, it takes time, but it's worth the journey.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're talking about the foot zoning stuff, for people who don't know what that is, it's like reflexology and like intuitive based healing, if I were to sum it up. Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, it's similar to reflexology where you're addressing the body through the feet, but you address the whole body through the feet every time. And also then it connects all of the signals and helps your body come back into homeostasis through the signals on the feet.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. So tell me, can you pinpoint like in your journey or paint a picture for what it looked like, kind of how you felt about yourself and about your life before you were kind of on this journey of like self-love and acceptance, and then after?
Okay. Yeah, I really needed somebody outside of myself to, one, teach me how to love myself. And two, the affirmation, the validation coming from outside of me, and feeling like if somebody asked me to do something, I needed to just do it, and I needed to give and give and give as much as I could, until I could give no more. And
Mhm.
that would be my way of showing love, if I
Ah,
just
yes.
gave as much as I could.
I love the way you summarize that, because we don't know how warped our sense of love is until we really spell it out.
Yes. Yeah, and I think it's really cool that, like, you don't know until you start this journey, and you're doing the inner work and you're seeing, like, oh my goodness, I really, like, when I go for a chocolate bar, I'm actually looking for peace in my life, and maybe I need peace in in a relationship rather than the chocolate bar, right? But
Yes, yes. It's all
yeah,
like
there's
so much of our decisions are from the subconscious space, right? That's based on these beliefs that we may or may not realize that are going on, right?
yeah,
And before
yeah,
you continue with that thought, I want to say the back to the love thing really quick, because you said I thought that giving everything equals love, right?
yeah.
One way I saw that in my childhood is I thought worry equaled love.
Right.
And
Yeah.
because I thought, and so when I got married to Jordan, he's just like cool cucumber, right? And I'd get upset about something and he'd be like, it's all good, and I'd be like, you hate me. Because I was like,
Right.
if you loved me, you wouldn't just be okay with this. Like, but but his way of loving me was listening to me. His way of loving me was like being there for me and believing in me, and but I didn't
Yeah.
see it like that at the time.
Yeah, oh, it's such a common thing. If worry equaling love, but worry, love equals love. And check this out. When you're loving yourself, it also doesn't mean you're going to be happy all the time, because love
Yeah.
doesn't equal happy. Love means you love yourself when you're happy, you love yourself when you're sad, when you're
Yes.
frustrated,
Yes.
all of these things. And one thing that I really feel like is true is, like, I think I'm loving myself, and as you keep down this journey and you kind of hop a fence at some point, and you
Yeah.
can look back and go, oh, I see the things that I was doing that were not loving. And
Yes.
then love, just like in any relationship, it's that journey of deepening the love that you feel
Yeah.
for yourself, and like really learning who you are. I love this quote, um that says, she knew the transition was not about becoming someone better, but allowing herself to become who she has always been.
That's so beautiful. That
And
is
I,
so beautiful.
because we really are who we are, and things just get covered up by, whether it be the trauma or stress, or so much input in our lives, and so much that output in our lives. And as we pare down what really is important to us, and learn to love ourselves more and more, we just get to be more of ourselves.
Yeah, I really like that. And I do think that it's hard to start the journey that way. I think it might not even be
Mhm.
possible to start that way. What I mean by is
Mhm.
oftentimes when you start this journey, you're trying to fix yourself,
Yeah.
to make yourself lovable or more likable or whatever. And that's not the best place to start, but I think that when your self-esteem is incredibly low, sometimes that's the only place you can start. But what I love is on that journey, I kind of realized, oh wait, no, 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 my aim is a little bit off here, right? I don't want to try to understand myself and read all these books to fix myself. I want to
Right.
understand myself so that I can make peace with myself, that I
Right.
can accept myself, accept my flaws, and encourage myself to work toward what I want and to feel like I have the freedom to do that. Because when we're so afraid of what people think of us and so afraid of failing and so afraid and so caught up in perfectionism that we don't really have that much freedom, right? How much freedom
Mhm.
do you really have when you're just terrified of what everyone thinks of you? You have very, very little freedom, right? So I love that quote, just kind of encapsulating this, like, I'm just trying to be comfortable being me. That's pretty
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, so we've got a comment here. It took me a long time to love myself after my husband passed away and my kids were all grown up
Mm.
and gone. And then my faith crisis hit. My life was a dumpster fire. I totally understand. Thanks for sharing your story, Gail. And glad to hear that you are on the path of loving yourself. We
Yeah.
are soul sisters, Gail.
Yeah, and I think like on the path to loving yourself, anywhere you start is a great place to start, right? Because that's where you are. You know, if you're
Yes.
starting out with I got to fix myself, fine, start there.
Yes. And like, or like, I gotta make myself a better mom for my kids. Like, start
Oh,
there,
sure.
right? Like,
Mhm.
that's a
Mhm.
great place to start. I've got friends where they're just dipping their toes on this journey, and it's like, that's a great place to start because it's so hard to motivate yourself to do good things just for you when your self-esteem is so damaged. But if you could sit
Yeah.
here and say, "Hey, I'm going to do this for my kids," you can get your foot in the door, and then you can actually learn to actually maybe care about yourself and like yourself. So, okay,
Yeah.
so next, I want to talk about kind of patterns you've seen. You've worked with clients for a lot of years now, helping with a variety of issues, but my guess is all of it kind of comes back to self worth, probably.
Mm.
Um, and I want to hear what patterns you've noticed as far as what your clients struggle with. What do they come to you for? And I'm going to share some things I've noticed with clients in like my hypnotherapy practice and largely in my own life as well.
Mhm.
So one thing that came to my mind was when people would come to me or even myself when I was looking for help, it was I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, I'm depressed, I'm burnt out, I'm on edge. Just like that whole mess.
Yeah.
um did you have a comment about that or what else do you notice people coming to you for?
I think that one of the patterns, like if we generalize, letting too much stress hang out in your life from whatever angle, whether it be I feel like I have to give and give and give until I have nothing left, or too much stress as in, too much pressure on yourself to get things done right when actually there are like 100 different or more different ways to do something right. um, Looking for other people's validation is another thing that I really see a lot of. Yeah, those are some things.
The validation is a huge one. Here, really quick, Gail said, "Does Karen have books?" No, but you have a program people can do with you, right? And you're going to
Yes.
talk a little bit more about that at the end, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, yeah. And yeah, I highly recommend Karen. I just think she's a superstar as far as getting to the root cause of your emotional distress. So she's fantastic. Okay, so validation. Yeah, I think what I notice a lot with myself and with others is that you have people coming to you and they're like, I'm upset about this thing, but like I'm not gonna let myself be upset about this thing. Like I'm gonna gaslight myself out of being upset about it. Like, oh well, I'm mad at my husband, but it's my fault because I'm just like too sensitive. Instead of like, you know what I mean? Instead of just like, okay, I
Mhm.
need to validate these feelings. I need to say, yes, I'm upset with him. Even if he's in the right, it's okay that I'm upset about this. Or it's
Yeah.
okay. And there's such a block with childhood trauma. There's such a block toward the ability to actually just feel your feelings and let them be okay. And then, like
Mhm.
you said, you just have too much stress hanging out all the time because you're not ever really processing your feelings. You're just kind of stuffing, you're trying to kind of keep them under wraps a little bit. So,
Mhm.
yes, validation, people struggling with that ton. Self-worth was a huge thing.
Mhm.
Like people come to me and they don't feel good about themselves and they have all
Mhm.
these like reasons why, but they don't really know why, right? They're like, "Well, I don't like
Mhm.
how much I weigh, or I don't like the way I look, or I don't like that I do this." But really, it was just such a blind spot to them to realize that usually it was a lack of parental love that left this kind of gaping wound in their soul, you know?
Mhm.
Thoughts about that?
Yeah. So, oh my goodness, I had a thought, and it totally left when you said thoughts about that. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
totally
it'll
do.
come to you.
I
It'll
do.
come to you.
I do. I have some thoughts about that. Okay, so one of the things that I love talking to clients about is you don't need to earn love. Love is a gift. And I think one thing that happens with parenting, and this, no shame, no harm, no foul to parents. Parents are people too, right? We know that. And they have their stuff that they're working through. But then, like, what can happen is mom's having a bad day, and she gets upset, and again, I just totally lost my thought. Oh, yeah, yeah, okay, okay, okay. I remember.
Got
Okay,
it.
so we got to stay focused here. Um,
No worries.
so the so okay, so I do something wrong. Say I do something wrong. Pretend somebody makes a mistake one day, right? And
Never.
but mom's having a bad day, or dad is having a bad day, and they get upset, and that is a feeling of withdrawing love. Then the next day, you get an A on your paper. Oh, hugs and kisses. Good job. Love is given for doing something good.
Mm.
And so then it starts to feel like, when that ends up being the pattern, it starts to feel like you need to earn love.
Mm.
And also friends, I mean, like friends in elementary school, right? Can even make you feel like you need
You
to
just
earn
you
love.
look at Jimmy the wrong way and you're an
Right.
outcast. Like,
Exactly.
no more monkey bars for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's just life experiences that bring about the belief that we need to earn love. But the truth is, you are lovable. You just need to recognize your worth, not prove your love. You internally recognize who you are versus trying to earn love.
This was such a mind-blowing thing for me because the way that I was thinking it through it was like, okay, I'm doing all these things for my husband because I'm trying to earn his love, right? I'm doing all these things for my kids because I'm trying to earn their love. Instead of like, you got to rewire the way you see it because what you really should be doing is, okay, I'm someone who deserves love and I'm someone who wants to do this good thing for this person because I genuinely want to connect with this person and not because I'm
Yeah.
trying to prove myself to this person, not
Yeah.
because I'm trying to earn this person's acceptance. Now, that's really, really hard to do. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm perfect at it. But the road to getting there is starting to understand yourself and to care about yourself so that you can do good things for you, so that you can take care of your needs, so that you can be someone who doesn't have to rely on other people's validation in order to feel okay about yourself.
Right. And so then one way that that just really looks is like, if I'm going to do something, say I'm going to clean the kitchen, and instead of saying internally, I'm going to clean the kitchen so this will make hubby happy because he likes a clean kitchen. Um, Switching that from then he will love me, which is really a subconscious feeling, right? To,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
what kind of person do I want to be? This is something that my husband likes, and I would love to do this service for him. And just using cleaning the kitchen as an example, but so many things. What kind of a person do I want to
Right.
be?
You could say, I want to be a spouse that contributes to the household, right? Because, and that's the kind of spouse I want also. And if we're both contributing, this can feel really good and it doesn't have to be a proving thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that because I really do try, and I don't know, I feel so grateful because I feel like me and Jared, we've been married for almost 10 years now, and that's given us some time to hash some shit out. And I love where we're at right now, where we're better at communicating things and we're better at deciding whose job is what. And it causes much less arguments because then it's like, hey, I know he's got my back with this. He knows I have his back with this. And it just feels good. And it doesn't feel like there's a lot of resentment building like there used to be, because
Yeah.
there was like, I'm trying to do this to get him to react a certain way. And when he doesn't react a certain way, then I get upset. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Right. Yeah. But if you just do
yeah.
it because that's the kind of person you want to be, and he does his stuff because that's the kind of person you want to be, turns out you guys are super similar. And so you work well together.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Oh, I love it. Okay, so back to what patterns have we noticed with our clients or ourselves? Lack of coping tools. I will preach this to the day I die. The biggest problem in this world is that nobody has coping techniques. Like, can you imagine how much less divorce and war and just like crime there would be if people just had healthy coping techniques? And sadly, most people don't. And
That's
it
true.
causes so many problems, more problems than you can even imagine. And I can say that because I can see my life and how messy and gross it was before I had coping techniques. And when I say messy and gross, I actually mean like even my house was messy and gross. And then after, like when I was coping with my stress, I actually could take care of the house. I actually could take care of myself. I could actually participate in hobbies. Like it just makes such a big difference. Um, Another pattern is, oh, this is an interesting one. Clients who are disconnected from their emotions and their needs and desires, where they're just like almost numb.
Hmm.
And that is always wild. And I mean, I've dealt with that on some level where it's like, as a child, your emotions are so unsafe and so punished that you actually really deeply disconnect from them on a very fundamental level, to the
Hmm.
point where you may feel depressed or anxious and have absolutely no idea why you're feeling that way.
Hmm.
Or even worse, in my opinion, is you get so bad that you're just numb and you don't really feel a whole lot of either side of the spectrum of emotion. And so if you're there, just know you're not crazy. A lot of people struggle with that. It is something you can work your way out of. All of this is something you can work your way out of. It's just a matter of taking the time, taking those little steps to try to reconnect. Did you have thoughts about those last two that I brought up, the coping and the numbing?
Yeah, well, so an interesting thing about numbing is depression is, a frequency above numbing, right? A frequency or two above numbing, and anger is a frequencies above depression, even. And so when you're coming out of depression, you may experience anger, and people don't like how that feels for a lot of reasons. And so
Right,
then
right.
they kind of shut themselves down, but it's actually a way that the nervous system works its way back up to um, being regulated, is going from depression through the anger to regulated. But
Yeah.
super important on how do you then deal with your anger. Are you going to lash out at people? That's not going to be a healthy way to cope with your anger. Maybe throwing clay, writing pages, tearing paper. I was angry one day and I was going to go down and cut out hearts out of a paper. That was my plan. Got interrupted in my plan, but that was my plan. Just like, what are you going to do to deal with the anger so that you can work through it? And another cool thing about the nervous system as you're going through is like when you're talking about depression and trying to come out of it and patterns that you're running, um, your brain tries to keep you safe, right? And so then, and your brain wants that dopamine, like you were talking about in the beginning, and your brain doesn't want to feel depressed. And it goes, well, okay, I remember last time I went shopping, I felt good. So then your
Yeah.
brain goes, go shopping. Or Go have
Yes.
a Coke or go have a chocolate bar or whatever it is, because your brain will look to solve the problem and it'll come up with what it knows to do. And so, learning the different coping skills, getting with a coach to help you see your blind spots, and learning the different coping skills, then your brain has another place to go besides um, the coping skills that haven't been working like you thought they were going to.
It's so true. I couldn't believe how much money I was spending when I was really stressed out, and I didn't realize it really was like a dopamine addiction to spending. And it wasn't like I was buying real expensive jeans or something. It's like, oh, this like $20 thing from Amazon that we totally need for the kitchen that we didn't really need,
Right.
you know? And but
Right.
like it would feel comforting. It would feel like I had control. It would feel like I had
Yeah.
power, but it's not the healthiest, right, coping technique. One thing I
Right.
want to say too about so depression and anxiety. Now, um I'm not a licensed mental health professional, but
Right.
what I've noticed in my own personal life is that sometimes depression and anxiety are directly just related to trauma and issues that you can resolve, and not
Mhm.
necessarily like a chemical imbalance, right? And I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but for me, like now this is a perfect example was um and you might remember this, Karen, because I think I talked to you about it. It was years ago when I was leaving Mormonism. I was severely depressed. And I remember I think it was in a session with you. I was chatting, and I was like, I don't deserve to be happy because I'm
Mhm.
not going to church, right? And so
Mhm.
that was a really powerful thing for me to just realize, like, oh, like there's like almost this reason why I'm depressed that's locked up in my brain, where it's like I just think I'm supposed to be because of this reason. And that
Mhm.
was so interesting to me. And it was after that realization that, because I had been trying to work out and eat healthy and do all these things to try to lift the depression, and it wasn't working. But when that awareness came in, like I started making more traction, and that was crazy. Um yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
and one other
Yeah.
thing I wanted to add was coping with anger. One of my favorite things
Mhm.
to do is to have a burn journal where you just like scream in it, basically like all caps, big letters, yelling at Verizon, whoever pissed you off, and then you burn it. And when you're done with it, when it's filled up. Another thing I love doing too is writing a letter to someone I'm really mad at, detailing very specifically all the reasons why I'm mad at them, and then throwing it away, you know? And of course, sometimes
Yeah.
there's a time and place where you actually need to talk to that person, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's just not, it's too long ago, whatever. And it's still, I think, just a very, very helpful way to process anger. Okay, so going
Yeah.
back to what patterns we've noticed with clients and with ourselves, the last thing I had, and unless you have something else, was they don't have a clear focus, direction, or goals, and
Mm.
that can leave them feeling very um lost and kind of purposeless and depressed.
Mhm.
Um
Yeah.
any comment on that, or any other things you notice with clients often?
Yeah, again, I think that can get them looking for happiness in another place, in like looking for love in all the wrong places, kind of a thing, just kind of what we've talked about, those, I think that this is, if I had this, this would make me happy. Well, it's not going to. It will, it'll bring you that little spark for a second, but then that spark is going to go away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very well said. Okay, we've got some comments here. Gail said, "My mom pitted us against each other. That was so sad."
So hard.
Joe said, "Mine too, but it only worked on our brother. My sister and I were always a team. Way to go." Oh,
Mhm.
it's hard developing coping mechanisms when you live in survival mode. Yes. Well, it's
Mhm.
hard developing coping mechanisms when no one shows you to have them.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Mm-hmm.
all you see is unhealthy coping, that's all you know how to do. That's the only
Mm-hmm.
tool in your tool belt. And you're definitely going to do it, because how else are you going to deal with all this stress? You have to deal with it somehow. And it's going to be through some kind of addiction. It's going to be through lashing out at other people. It's going to be through self-sabotaging your life, punishing yourself. It's gonna come out somehow. And that's not to shame yourself, right? Just to understand that when you're hurting and you don't know how to deal with that hurt, you're just gonna make yourself and other people hurt worse. I think it was Gail that quoted this really cool quote last time we were in a video together, where it was like, if you oh man, I'm gonna butcher it, Gail. The cutting and the bleeding quote. It was so good. Hopefully she'll remember what I'm talking about. It was like, if people who get hurt, basically just saying, um they will bleed on people who didn't cut them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh yeah.
if your mom is hurting and she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get help, she's going to bleed on you even though you weren't the one that damaged her, right? Maybe it was her mom or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. Okay. So any other comments about just patterns you've seen with people, what they're struggling with, what they commonly come to you struggling with?
I think we've covered the bulk of it. I'm sure when we hang up, I'll
We
think, or
beat the
when we
dead
get off, I'll
horse
think of
enough.
something else. But
Well,
yeah,
then I'll have to have
that's
you
pretty
back.
much. Yeah, we'll just, I think like looking for, oh, okay, I need to do this for my child. That's
Like what?
like
Like
I
like a
need
duty or
to
a
take my
responsibility?
child to the amusement park. You know,
Okay, okay.
like doing things for your child or for someone else that you feel like is really going to bring them happiness, because really what you're missing is feeling happy inside, and so you want to do something for them to help them, but in reality you just want to feel peaceful. Does that make sense? But you're doing
Yes.
it through by doing something that you think is going to make them happy, but again, it's fleeting. Totally fun. Totally fun. You should do it, but just change your
Intention,
motivation,
right?
your
Yeah.
intention. Yeah.
Yes, yes, because there's a difference. And like in my life, what I'll notice is I'll start feeling guilty, like I'm not doing enough for them.
Right.
So then I need to take them to the park, and it's like I need to take them to the park for them, but it's like, no, actually I'm taking to them to the park for me, because I don't want to deal with my guilt. And that's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the right way to look at it, right? It should be like,
Mm-hmm.
if I don't have the energy to take them to the park, why is that? Are my priorities misaligned, right? Because if I don't have enough time to spend quality time with my kids, maybe something's misaligned. And so I try not to get hard on myself. I try not to be hard on myself. If I feel like I'm not spending enough time with my kids, I try to pull back and say, okay, what am I spending my time doing? And what is there something that needs to go? Because sometimes it'll be like, I have too much on my plate, or it's just that my expectations are too high, right? So it
Right.
might be I am taking them to the park enough and I'm just worried that it's not enough, or it might be that I've got too much on my plate, so I'm too stressed to do as much for them as I want to, and
Mm-hmm.
and then I feel guilty, and so then it's this like I'm on continual burnout, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you beat that by not overwhelming your schedule, right? By not
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming yourself and taking good care of yourself. Like, um, I've heard this over the years, like, and I'm sure you have too, where clients will say like, "Well, I don't have time to take care of myself. I don't have time," and I have so very little sympathy for that. Like, I get it, I know, I understand, but if you don't have time for yourself, something has to go.
Mm-hmm.
Something has to go, because if you don't have time for yourself, you are hurting everyone, right? You're hurting
Yeah. And
yourself, you're hurting your kids, you're hurting your spouse. And and really, it's an excuse. It's an excuse from a place of low self-worth, where it's
mm-hmm.
easier to just say I don't have time, when really it's scary to think about taking good care of yourself, and it's really hard. And
Mhm.
so is it really about the time, or is it really like there's a self-worth kind of um wall you're hitting, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So check this out. Um, okay, so when my oldest was 9 and then the next one was 7, my husband was working away from home. I was pregnant. I was super sick, basically bedridden. He was working away from home 4 days a week. And woo, we were just like doing what we could to make things work, you know. And so then several years ago, I was talking to my oldest about this situation, and I said, "So what was hard about that situation for you?" And he said, "Mom, the hardest thing about it was how hard you were on yourself.
Oh my gosh.
It was not having cereal for dinner. It wasn't that they didn't get to
Wow.
be in sports. It wasn't that dad was gone. It was how hard I was on myself." And that was so profound. So
Wow,
profound.
that is
It,
blowing my mind.
yeah, it
That
is
is
not
blowing
worth
my
it.
mind. It's like I can hear, like, Lucas 20 years from now saying that to me. I'm like,
Right.
"Okay, okay, alright. I need to forgive myself a little more. I need to be a little more compassionate with myself," like, because that
Yeah.
is a gift to him. I'm so afraid of it being a punishment. I'm
Mm.
so we're and this is a common trauma response. We're afraid that if we go too easy on ourselves, we're gonna just mess everything up because we're just gonna be bad if we're not hard on ourselves. But no, you get so much further if you love and encourage yourself instead of being
Yeah.
hard on yourself. Now, easier said than done, right? But
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that's the good that's the good that's the good story
Yeah.
there. Gail, in
Yeah.
my
I'm the
I'm
own
my
worst
own worst
critic.
critic.
Yeah. Yeah. That,
Yup, we all
so
are.
like,
Isn't we're all our own worst everything. Anyway, go
mhm.
ahead, Karen.
Yeah, is our motive, you know, like you're saying, being hard on ourselves, you know, our we think we're motivating ourselves through punishment, but oh my goodness, isn't it draining to be punishing yourself and putting pressure on yourself, and you don't
Yeah.
realize how much draining it is until you support yourself through love, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier than I thought.
I had no idea how hard I was on myself until I really started to work through in getting coaching, in therapy, in journaling, until I started to really forgive myself and let go. And then all of a sudden, it was like I could feel all this weight coming off that I didn't know was there. And I remember,
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I actually want to connect with my kids because I love them and I don't feel any guilt around it. And that was just like, mind blowing to me because I didn't understand what it was supposed to feel like. And I didn't
Yeah.
realize how like bad it was feeling because it was just so normal to feel so much pressure and so much
Mhm.
guilt. And so, yeah, it's a wild, wild ride.
Yeah. True.
Oh, true that. Okay, so we are probably not gonna have time to get to everything we wanted to talk about. So let's talk about what do people need in order to move past what they're struggling with? So kind of back onto the topic of the day again. It's not easy to find happiness in ourselves and it's not possible to find it elsewhere. That's the quote of the day. What do people need when they come to you in your sessions? What do they really need to move past what they're struggling with, in your opinion? What's one thing?
One thing I think is radical acceptance of the situation as it is. Like, and like, you are who you are. Radically accept who you are.
Okay, but what if I don't like who I am?
Radically, you are not going to change yourself by hating yourself.
I love that. Okay, give me an example though. Like, can you be specific? Like, when you say radical acceptance, what does that
Okay.
look like? What does that feel like for someone who's
Okay.
never heard of that before? They come to
Okay.
you, like, I'm scared, I'm stressed, I'm freaking out. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying?
Okay. Stressed and freaking out because I'm going to chronic illness, right? Because that's who I've been talking to lately about this. But stressed and freaking out. Okay.
Right.
I'm trying to do this and this and this and this, right?
Yeah.
How about if you accept your actual energy levels instead of feeling like you don't have enough energy.
I
Accept
love
where
that.
you are and work from there, because wishing you had more energy isn't going to make it so. Accepting your energy levels then lets you prioritize and, quit hitting yourself over the head with a hammer that is, it's not going to help you move forward. With chronic illness, that's a big thing, is, well, accept that, like when my kids were in high school, I said, my thing was, we did doctor's appointments instead of sports. That's, I mean, like, that's how much we were going to the doctor with everybody's
Yes.
stuff. But, so I could say, well, I am so angry that we can't do sports. This shouldn't be this way. Somebody needs to get healthy, and you can fill in your own experience there. But
Right.
the truth is, it is what it is. And if you can accept what is, then you can actually solve the right problem.
I love that. Then you can solve the right problem. See, that's stoicism, right? The beauty of the philosophy of stoicism. Focus on what you can control, let go of what you can't. So much of
Yeah.
our lives suffering is because we totally mess that up. We spend way too much energy on things that we can't control and we neglect things we actually can. I love that. Focus on the problem you actually can solve. And oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, this relates to relationships as well. Like, well, they need to treat me nicer. Okay, maybe so, but what do you have control over? Like, is it like, hey, I just can't accept that kind of behavior from you, and so I'm gonna walk away. We'll come back to this. Or is it, my spouse really is XYZ instead of ABC, so I'm gonna work with my spouse being XYZ. My
Yeah.
husband is more
Yeah.
introverted than I thought he was. He's pretty animated, but not as
Yeah.
extrovert as I thought he was. And so
Right.
then, okay, am I just going to say, well, you should be more extrovert, because I
Right,
thought you
right.
were? Or,
Yeah.
okay, this is who he is. This is, I can work with that.
Yes. Yeah, how can I work with that? How can I make that work? I
Hmm.
love that. The accept where you are is such a powerful thing and it's so hard, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes we have to accept that our life is a mess, that we
Hmm.
are a mess,
Hmm.
that we are making huge mistakes, that we are out of control, and that is a really hard place to be. And I think the key there, if things are just a total 100% disaster, is you have to have compassion for yourself. You have to understand that usually your life isn't a total disaster without some kind of sparking event that kind of caused it to get to that point. So it may have been your unhealthy childhood, it may have been a divorce, it may have been something. And then if you can muster up a little bit of compassion for yourself and say, you know what, this is a terrible mess, and I can just see a little glimpse of why that is. And I can give myself a little hug and say, you know what, this sucks, but it kind of makes sense that this sucks.
Right.
That's a window into a whole nother universe. Because what
Hmm.
happens from there is then you can say, okay, this sucks. And I'm ready for it to change. This sucks
Hmm.
and I understand why it sucks. This sucks and if you understand why it sucks, you can know how to make it better, right? And that's the
Yeah.
beauty of healing, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Mic
Yeah.
drop. I gotta
My
drop my actual mic. It's too expensive.
just, yeah.
Just the pen.
Pen. Yeah. Pen drop.
It's
Yeah.
efficient.
Okay, so the other day I was thinking, oh, you know what? I have not prepared for XYZ as much as I thought, as much as I wanted to. And I felt myself start to get a little bit hard on myself. I was like, wait a minute, whoa, hold the door.
Yeah.
That isn't going to help me. And so I took the time to really change my focus from being hard on myself to, okay, wait a minute. it is what it is. Here I am. I can't change what happened in the past, but I can still be successful in what I want to do. And I am still worthy of my own love, even though
Yes.
I didn't do it exactly as I had originally planned. And oh my goodness, I had a much better day than I would have in the past. In the past, I would have been like, I didn't do it. This is going to go terrible, blah, 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 and just feel miserable all day long. And
Yes. Yes.
it's so, like it's hard to love with yourself. Choose your hard.
Yes, that's true. That's true. It's also hard to be hard on yourself. I
Yeah.
love that. It's just it's such a different perspective to take. This idea of trying to encourage yourself instead of tear yourself down. And it's like you have to start so small when you're
Yeah.
just starting that. You have to start with like, Morgan, good job for not beating your kids today. Like good job, for not yelling at them or like sometimes I even like have to congratulate myself for not cleaning too much because I've got back problems and if I clean too much it's very problematic. And so I have to tell myself, like, you know what, Morgan, it sucks that the floors aren't clean, but hey, good job not overdoing it on your back. Like,
Woo,
and you
woo.
just got to start really small. And if you can encourage yourself, it can go such a long way into actually just getting your life to a place where it's functioning a lot better and you feel a lot better about yourself and you're actually able to move toward what you really want instead of just spinning in your own mess, which I feel like I just did for like a really long time. And I feel like that's what actually most people spend their whole lives doing is just spinning in all
Mhm.
of their mess because they just
Yeah.
have no idea how to get out of it.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about what do people need in order to move past what they're struggling with, these common issues, you have to learn to understand yourself. This is the key to everything. If
Mhm.
you can learn to understand yourself, you can change your life so much. The reason why most people can't sustain change in their life is because they don't have a clue what's going on with them. They don't really know what they're struggling with. They don't really know what they want. They don't really understand why they can't stick to things or why they get triggered by certain things. And when you're in the dark like that, you can't move forward. You can't swim forward when you're drowning, right? And so
Mhm.
shining a light on yourself, shining a light on who you are, what you need, what you want, why you are the way that you are. And this all comes from childhood usually. Shining a light on that actually paves the way forward because when you can see where you're coming from and you can see what's holding you back, then you know what to change. Then you know how to attack it at the root instead of just trying to like willpower through it and giving up after a couple weeks, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So the let's see, with a big piece of this, a big piece of I think what people need in order to kind of create that happiness from within is learning to validate yourself with your emotions, with your struggles. It's so hard to do when you don't trust yourself and you don't like yourself. It's so hard to validate your emotions, but it just starts with a little ounce of compassion, right? Of like, you know what? This thing happened and it made me feel this way and it makes sense that I feel this way. One of my favorite journaling things right now is I'll just bullet like this is bothering me. This is bothering me. This is bothering me and I'll just bullet it all out and then I'll say with every bullet I will say it makes sense that you feel this way. It makes sense that you feel this way. It makes sense that you feel this way. I'm hammering in that validation, right? Because ultimately the way that you move forward through these difficult situations is through processing your emotions. If you don't process them, you're going to stay stuck. So, if you
Mhm.
can validate your emotions, then you can process them, you can let them go. They're not weighing you down so much, and it's easier to move forward. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was having a conversation with a friend and I said, the other person was feeling this way, I was feeling that way, but then they were like, no, you shouldn't be feeling that way. So I was like, oh my goodness, what should I do? And she said, so they were not validating you, so you didn't validate you. And I was like, and this is why I talk to people, because like, help me
Yes.
see that pattern. But like, you're feeling the way you do for a reason. The trick is to
Yes.
figure out the why, not that your
Yes.
feelings are invalid, but why. Like, maybe I feel like I should be different. And so therefore I feel like I should react differently. Well, I am who I am. I need to love who I am and work with that. And just even working with that, my responses end up being different.
Yes, and you can't shame yourself out of emotions, right?
Mm-mm.
You can't say, "Well, I shouldn't feel angry." So what? It's just going to go away. It doesn't go away, right? And
No, it makes it
that's
worse.
yes, it makes it worse. And that's the beauty of this, like, okay, like realizing I can be in the wrong and still be allowed to feel these things. You don't have to be right for your feelings to be valid, right? Like if it
Yeah.
turns out that your boyfriend can't come and see you because something happened and he can't afford it or something, like you, if you lived far apart. I heard this story recently from a friend, and just because like it's a legitimate reason he can't come doesn't mean you're not allowed to be upset about it, like, and but we
Mhm.
we take that to an extreme where it's like we really don't let ourselves feel any kind of way about anything, right? So just
Yeah.
understanding, like, when you get upset about something, the best thing you can do is to try to learn to validate it. And that starts with, it makes sense that I feel this way.
Yeah.
And you may not like it at first because, like, oh, my son does something and I get mad at him, right? And so then I think to myself, like, I'm the problem. I'm the one getting mad. And it's like, no, there's a reason I'm getting mad. This is triggering me for a reason that I don't understand. How can I
Mhm.
try to understand this? And how can I validate this anger while also not taking it out on other people, right? That's the key. How can
Mhm.
I validate my feelings without just being a bitch, right? Not being
Mhm.
rude to people or um unleashing, your frustration on other people. So, yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
Yeah.
So another thing on the list I had, which we've already talked about a little bit, is just learning to cope is such a big part of finding that happiness from within, right? Learning to cope is such a big piece of it. We've already hit on it a lot. Journaling, meditation, cognitive behavioral therapy is one of my favorites. EFT tapping, EMDR, therapy, coaching. Karen mentioned foot zoning and energy work if you're interested in those kind of things. All of these things can help you to cope with your feelings, to process them, to understand yourself better so that life can just move forward more easily, more smoothly. And the
Yeah.
last thing I had on the list is actually learn to like yourself, to care about yourself, because when you come at life from this angle of, I don't like myself, I feel guilty all the time, I breathe too much air, I take up too much space, it's such a toxic place to come from. It's toxic for the people in your life to see you treat yourself that way. And if you can actually start to learn to care about yourself, because it's a lie that you're not lovable. It's a lie that you learned from your parents. There is nothing true about that at all. Your brain thinks it's true, though. So it's not easy to get away from that. But what you got to understand is that if you can't learn to love you, what are you doing? Who are you waiting to love you that's going to fix that? No one can. If you can't be there for you, that's the bare minimum, right? If you can't learn to be there for you, you're in trouble, right? And it's not
Mhm.
easy, but you can start so small, right? And it can make such a massive difference. So Karen, thoughts about that, about learning to cope, learning to care about yourself?
Yeah, I think you said that very well, and that's really just what it boils down to. And if it's like I don't even know, get a book, watch a podcast, do something that will get you some information to start that journey. I looked outside of myself for people to help me understand that journey, but it really came down to I needed to figure it out for myself. how do I learn to love myself? And as you put that energy out there that, okay, I want to learn to love myself, opportunities will come your way.
Yeah.
Information will come your way to help you on that journey.
Yeah, and you can start so small. I mean, you can start with like,
Mhm.
I'm just gonna spend 5 minutes writing my feelings down. And
Mhm.
that can be such a huge that's compound interest, right? With something so small.
Yeah.
And I hear that with Atomic Habits, I think they say make it so easy that you can do it 98% of the time so that you can form a habit. Like, how you ask yourself, how much could I journal every day that I know I could do it 98% of the time, or even just 70% of the time? And if you say to yourself, okay, I could do it for 2 minutes, like, just start there. Just get
Yeah.
a foothold, because learning to love and care about yourself is going to bring the most happiness, the most fulfillment, the most excitement to your life that you could possibly have, because otherwise you're going around blind. You're tripping up on all your fears, you're tripping up over all your emotions and issues, you're letting people treat you badly because you don't feel good about yourself. That's the alternative, right? So there really is no alternative. You have to learn to love yourself. That's not a livable situation, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the ways that I love for validating myself, if I'm doing something, I'll say to myself, okay, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to validate everything that comes to mind.
Yes.
So it's super fun because like this one day I was like, this is frustrating. Yes, it is valid. Man, I'm spending too long on this. Yes, I am. Valid. I'm just like, oh, I should move on now. Yes, I should. Instead of going, like, why am I feeling that way? Or, kinds of things. So I'm just going through my little process. And every few minutes I would say, and for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to validate myself. Still,
Just all of
keeping
it.
it
Yeah.
just small, but then I ended up doing, of course, more than 5 minutes. But then, I was like, man, I haven't done anything yet. Yes, valid. And I was like, no, that's not. Yes, I have. But the cool thing about that was
Yes.
like in validating myself, I could feel what truth felt like.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when I said, okay, I'm not doing anything, okay, that's valid. I was like, that does not feel the same.
Oh, I
So that was
love
fun.
that. I love that. Isn't that funny when you're like doing these little extras and you're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I love those moments. I love those moments. Okay, so I want to post down here because we're going to be getting ready to take calls here in just a minute. We're going to take
Okay.
live calls for anyone who wants to join. You don't have to turn your camera on. You can just pop on, give us an aha, like something you like that you heard today. You can tell us any comments that came to your mind. You can ask a question. It will put you in a waiting room temporarily. Just hang in there in case we get a couple callers. And while people are getting ready for that, I want to share a little interesting example I had myself. So I've been dealing with some health stuff, and it's been very frustrating. Valid, very, very, very frustrating. And I was doing some research yesterday and found out that some foods that my specialist was telling me to eat were not okay. And I got so angry because because I feel so scared, like I don't know what to eat. That isn't going to make my situation worse right now, right? And so I was thinking like this is really upsetting me, and I was getting really worked up about it, and I was like, okay, take a breath, take a step back. Why is this so hard for me? Like just like let it come. And I was just like, I just feel so unsafe with food because I don't know what I can eat. And I was like, okay, this is not about the food. This is about wanting to feel safe. And I was like, okay, absolutely, I want to feel safe. It's totally okay that I want to feel safe. How can I create like a better internal environment where I can feel safe even if I don't know what I can eat, right? And so just realizing that sometimes when things trigger us, there's a deeper underlying issue there, and if you can just become aware of what that is, it can be really helpful. And the best way to figure that out is just to get curious. Be like, "Why is this bothering me so much? Why am I having such I ask this myself a lot. Why am I having such a visceral reaction to this very small thing. And then just giving yourself that love, giving yourself that patience, and encouraging yourself that like you can work through whatever it is, because you can, because outside of death, everything is survivable and thrivable. So there's nothing that can stop you from making your life better, right? Um, you can do it. It's just a matter of asking the right questions, I guess I'll say. Right. Comments on that, or any other personal examples that come to mind you want to share while we're waiting for callers?
I think that, loving yourself is multifaceted. I think it's, like you can, if you can like learn to love yourself in one little area, then that can bleed over to other areas. So if you just take on, okay, I'm going to love myself in everything all the time, you're going to get overwhelmed. So you want to set yourself up for success. Um, Pick one area. I'm going to love the way I make dinner, or whatever,
Yes.
something that you're repeating so you can practice. And
Yeah.
so then how do you love yourself while I make dinner? Oh, I just spilled that. Okay. And I love myself even though I spilled that. I deeply and completely love and accept myself,
Oh
which is,
man.
that's a fun thing, just like, oh, I just burned the macaroni. Okay, what am I going to do about it, rather than, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Because one thing that keeps
Yes.
people from trying new things is the way they treat themselves when they make a
Yes.
mistake. And
Oh
so
my
if you
god.
can, right? And so then if you can be more kind to yourself in all that you do, you're going to be more willing to do things. If you're stuck on your couch, maybe check and see, how do you treat yourself when you do things? If you're hard on yourself, that may be one of the reasons you're stuck on your couch. There can be lots
I
of reasons, but
I absolutely love that you explained this in the way that you did, because it's such a deep awareness of this topic, right? Because it's so easy to sit here and say, like, oh, I'm lazy and that's why I don't want to try new things, or like, I'm just scared of what's going to happen, or I'm scared of failing. It's like, no, you're scared of how you're going to torment yourself when you fail. You're not afraid of failing. You're afraid of torturing yourself when you fail. That's what you're really afraid of. That's how I feel like with parenting too. Is like, I'm not afraid of being a bad mom. I'm afraid of what I'm going to do to myself when I realize, like, down the road how I messed them up, right? And I'm just
right.
like, I'm horrified at that thought. So that is so important to realize that. And it's so powerful to realize that, because that is something, that is one of the very few things that is actually in our control in this lifetime, is how we treat ourselves. Now, it doesn't feel like it's in our control because it's very compulsive to be rude to ourselves. That's okay. It's
Mhm.
something that you practice, that you work on, that gets way, way better. Um, and just reminding people, we're going to be wrapping up here in a few minutes. If you want to jump on, give us a comment, give us a call, give us a high five, feel free to do so. Karen, I'm so glad you brought that example up. That is such a, oh,
Yeah.
it's so easy to not see it, to just look at it the layer above and be like, yeah, I'm just really
Hmm.
afraid of failing. It's like, no,
Hmm.
no, no.
Yeah.
I I don't know that I don't know that most people really, I don't know that anyone that's really at the root of their fear. I think the root really is usually how you treat yourself when you fail. Like, I'd be
Yeah.
surprised if there's anyone that's like, no, I really just
Hmm.
don't like failing. No, it's, you don't like how you feel about yourself when you
Hmm.
fail. You don't like how you
Hmm.
treat yourself when you fail. And that's just such a mind-blowing thing.
Oh yeah, and check this out. Okay, so like I don't want to make a mistake because my best friend or my mom or my dad or my husband will be mean to me or call me out on it. And
Mm,
so I don't want to make this mistake. I don't want to do it wrong. Guess what? How do you feel about yourself when somebody calls you out on something?
right, right. It all just comes back to you
Yeah.
and how you feel about yourself. I think that that is like that's how you wrap up like life and what we're trying to do. Everything comes back to wanting to feel good about yourself. I feel like
Mhm.
when you boil it all down, that's what it is. And I think that most of us don't know how to feel good about ourselves in a healthy way,
Right.
right? So we're just kind of trying to feel good
Mhm.
about ourselves and failing because
Mhm.
we're setting our self-worth on things that are not stable, right? Like other people or other
Yeah.
hobbies or a job promotion or whatever, things that aren't stable. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this discussion has been so fun.
Yeah, totally. Totally love it. Yeah, and like, okay, say you have somebody who struggles with feeling anxious a lot, and then
Yeah.
you've got the circular thoughts, and you've got the brain that's just going to be hyper focused on the details of what's going
Yes.
wrong, because that's where your brain is. And so then it feels like, well, I can't love myself because I've got this brain stuff going on. Okay, the brain stuff is like, I separate it out. Like, I love
Yeah.
myself while I feel anxious, while I've got these loops running. And like, how do I support myself? Maybe I need a drink of water, or maybe I need some brain food. Maybe I need some protein. Maybe I need to get an outside um voice in this to help me
Yeah.
think through. But just like, okay, well, I should be able to think through this myself. Said who?
Said
I
who?
am
Yes.
I am where I am. I radically accept that I need help thinking through this right now, and
Yeah.
so do it.
Oh, I love that. Like, said who? Because we have so many shoulds, right?
Mhm.
But ultimately, we have all these shoulds, but then we just have where we're at. And where we're at is based off of our childhood, our experiences, our lack of knowledge, right? And it just is what it is, right? And
Mhm.
so you have to kind of leverage this in your mind of like, I am where I'm at because of all these things that have happened, and it's okay, and I don't have to stay there, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just so beautiful. Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't think we have any callers, but people can jump on if they want to. But let's leave people with a couple simple, crazy simple things to do if they want to try to work on finding more happiness from within. Um, so if we could come up with like maybe three little things and they could just pick one thing that resonates with them to try.
Okay.
Honestly, one of my favorite things is the writing a letter to someone and burning
Mhm.
it. I found that so healing, and it's just such a quick thing. You can sit down, you can write that letter in 5 minutes and you can throw it away, and it can be very, very freeing. So that's tip number 1 is if you have someone in your life that has hurt you, and it doesn't matter, they could still be in your life. It could be your husband, right? And you love him, but he's done things that have hurt your feelings. Write a letter to him. Tell him exactly how it made you feel, why it made you feel that way, and then read the letter back to yourself, give yourself a hug and throw it away, right? You don't have to give
Mhm.
it to him. In some situations you might feel like you actually need to share that letter, but I think the letter in the way I'm describing it is more of a I'm listening to myself and I'm releasing myself from these emotions. Karen, do you have a little tip of something someone could do that they could just that would be real easy for them to try to do?
Yeah, and I want to do a follow up to that too. Like, if you feel
Please.
like if you need to give them the letter. I had a therapist tell me that, like, she was saying, okay, what do you want to say to this person? And I told her what I wanted to say, and she said, never say the first thing that comes to mind, and probably not the second or the third thing. So like, if you're writing out and you really feel like you need to get your feelings out there, get them out on paper, process it for yourself until you get to the point where you're in more of a healthy spot to have a conversation with them, rather than a bashing. Throw up on paper, not on people.
I love that.
Same therapist. She was amazing. So throw up on paper, not on people. And then when you get it to the point where your emotions are more under control, then you can present it in a way that's going to be constructive. So that's
Yes,
one.
I
I
love
love that.
right, because so much of our experience maybe with relationship and conflict is yelling at each other, right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
not productive, right? So if you can get the edge off your emotions and you
Yeah.
can say, okay, what is this really about? Maybe this is really about like I don't like when someone treats me in this particular way. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, that's something that can be worked on, but you have to be specific, right?
Yeah.
And you have to know what it is that needs to be changed. And it has to be something that can be changed, right? It can't just be this like, when you do this, right? So you got to narrow in and be like, this is what needs to change. And that's when relationships get amazing, when you can
Yeah.
pinpoint the very specific things that are upsetting you. So what's your
Yeah.
tip for people?
Okay. I think the validate yourself for 5 minutes, because you can do that while you're doing anything, and
Yay.
you don't have to sit down and take the time to do it, so you can choose like Morgan's way of, sit down and write down how you're feeling, and then it's valid that I feel that way, or just like every thought that comes to mind, I valid, valid, valid. I love that one.
Yes, I love that one too. Yeah, I always write it specifically. I say it makes
Mm.
sense that you feel this way because that's the opposite of gaslighting,
Yes.
which I
Yeah.
usually gaslight myself. Like I shouldn't feel this way, and like
Yeah.
ah, doesn't work. Gail said my husband said if someone calls or texts a nasty message, never answer right away. I love that. That's really sound
Mhm.
advice.
Yeah.
Okay, last tip. Oh, last tip will be Mama Joe. I scream out my frustrations in the car.
Nice.
Gail said always wait 24 to 48 hours. Yeah, I would say at
Right.
least wait a few hours for sure.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah.
certainly more than a few seconds, which is what a lot of us will not do anyway. So,
Yeah. Okay,
okay.
I have one more. I have one
Yep,
more.
do
Okay,
it.
so put your hand on your heart and just ask, what is it that I really need?
Yes. What do I
What is
need
it
right
that
now?
I really need?
And just listen. You'll be
Mm-hmm.
surprised like what
Stop.
answers you actually give
Mm-hmm.
yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it might just
Yeah.
be I need a hug, right? And then you have to have the vulnerability to say like I need a hug, right? Or you like or I need to feel heard. I need a friend. I need whatever it is, just like try to honor it. And yeah, I also love the if you're feeling really anxious or really upset, you can I love this tip. I heard this on the Mel Robbins podcast, and this is tip number 4 now. If you feel really, really upset, you can like try to find where you feel it in your body, and you can just put your hands there. And like when I feel stressed, like I almost always feel it in my chest, and I just put my hands there, and I just feel it. And I don't try to think about it. I don't try to fix it because sometimes we think too much and we don't just feel, right? Too much thinking, not enough feeling. And I just put my hands there like I'm giving myself a little hug where I feel distressed and I just feel it. And that's it. And you can do that for, a couple seconds. You can do it for a minute, whatever. It's easy and it helps me a ton. I'm surprised how much even just putting my hands on myself is comforting. It like alleviates some of the anxiety like immediately. And that was shocking to me. I was like, wow, that's so easy to do. And yeah, so that's so awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
so before we finish, Karen, tell us about your program, tell us about your discounts, whatever you want to tell us about. And I will just say that Karen's an amazing person if you're looking to get deeper healing, if you're looking to understand yourself. She's great. She has great resources. Yes, yes, yes.
Thanks, Morgan. Thanks,
Yeah.
Morgan. Okay, so I have a couple of ways that I work with people. Well, I have a few different ways, but the two I'm going to talk about on this one is one, the my program called Rise: 7 Steps to a Happy, More Powerful Me. And that's the one that walks us through the chakras, starting at the root chakra. There are 7 main chakras. So starting at the root chakras, we do 3 sessions in the root chakra. And the root chakra is about it's safe to be me. It's safe to be in my family. It's safe to be on this planet. It's safe to have needs. And if any of those don't feel secure, then that means your root chakra is out of balance. 98% of Americans have their root chakra and their sacral chakra out of balance. So if you are in that 98%, welcome to the norm.
And
But
I want to chime in there super quick and just say, if you don't think you believe in chakras, that's okay. I don't
yeah,
think I believe in chakras, and I did the program and it was super helpful
yeah, because like,
because it's a way to organize the information. I don't want anyone to
yes,
get turned off by it
yeah.
because it's all about understanding you and working through
Mhm.
your blocks. So anyway, keep going, keep
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. So what this program does is it's like I present the topic that we're going to talk about. And then, like people, you might say, well, this is what's really bothering me. Yes. And this topic under here is an underlying belief that causes that issue up there.
Getting to the
So,
root, right?
mhm,
Getting to the
getting to the
root
root.
of these issues,
Yeah.
right?
And so that's a 5-month program. And I love it. It's 18 sessions long. It's fantastic. The other way that I work with people is like standalone sessions, which I call them standalone sessions, but it doesn't just have to be one. That's where, when you're like, Karen, this is what's on my mind right now.
Yeah.
And so we work through that. I've got this really stressful situation. Okay, let's work through that. And I have several different techniques that I use, which we can talk about those when we talk one on one. But so tonight, for being here on Morgan's podcast, or in the future, if you're watching this, the replay, shoot me an email. Let me know that this is where you got this information from, and I will give you $10 off your first 2 sessions, or $100 off the Rise program if you decide you want to do the Rise program. So then, yeah, email me. We can set up an appointment for a transformation strategy session, and
And
we'll take
that's
it from there.
complimentary, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So no harm, no foul. Yes. So all
Yep.
those details are below. You'll see her website, which will talk more about her program, and you'll also see her email if you want to reach out to her. Thank you, Karen, for being here. Any
Mm-hmm.
closing thoughts before we go? This discussion was amazing.
There's not a good reason to not love yourself. You
Oh,
said, but
my heart.
but 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 what about when I did this? And what about when this happened in my life? It's not a good reason not to love yourself. It's actually a really good reason to love yourself.
Even more of a reason to love yourself, right?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that blows my mind. Yeah, and I'll just close with the thought of 2,500 years ago on the Temple of Delphi, I don't know how to say it. It was inscribed 3 phrases, and one of them was know thyself. 2,500 years ago. And we still haven't figured it out. Sadly, we haven't quite figured out how important know thyself really is. But some of the smartest people in the world that lived 2,000 years ago knew how important it was. And now you know, and now we can all do better. And with that, everyone have an awesome night, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Yeah. Thanks, Morgan.
Peace. Good night.